They say revenge tastes best cold, but sometimes it's better served at 3 a.m. with an army of tow trucks. Imagine this. You wake up choking on the sharp stench of burning asphalt. Your gravel driveway, the one you spent $80,000 on specifically to stay out of HOA jurisdiction, has been paved over during the night. No warning. No permission. Your fence posts are scattered like pulled teeth. The survey stakes you paid to have set are smashed into metal splinters. Then comes the letter. The HOA president not only admits to the work but bills you $3,200 for the community upgrade and tax on monthly maintenance dues. The arrogance drips from every word as she insists your rustic road had to be brought up to proper standards. What she didn't realize. I'm a retired commercial developer with a quiet little contract that lets me move any car into any impound lot in the county. By sunrise, every vehicle belonging to her HOA cronies had disappeared as though the earth had swallowed them whole. Now tell me, what would you do if someone bulldozed your property overnight? Where are you watching this from? And what's the worst HOA nightmare you've ever faced? My name's Garrett Rockwell, and 3 years ago I thought I'd found heaven. After selling my construction company in Dallas, my wife Elena and I bought 3 acres of rolling Texas hill country on the edge of a subdivision called Willowbrook Commons. Our house sat nearly a quarter mile back from the road, reached by a long gravel drive that crunched under tires like cereal and kept cars slow and respectful. The best part, the road wasn't tied to the subdivision at all. I bought it separately, carved out decades earlier by a rancher named George Blackwood who was too smart to let an HOA anywhere near his land. That cost me an extra $80,000, but it was the single smartest investment I ever made. Elena's a high school principal, grounded and steady, with a laugh that could calm a storm. Our daughter Sophia, 15, was laser-focused on college prep and had little patience for teenage drama. We moved here for peace, privacy, and evenings on the porch with mockingbirds singing and the scent of Elena's jasmine drifting across the yard. And then came Vivian Ashworth, HOA president, realtor, and walking citation notice. Picture the most self-satisfied agent you've ever met, then multiply her entitlement by 10 and hand her a gavel. She drove a white BMW with vanity plates reading Prop Ken. She'd sued a dozen neighbors over mailbox paint and bird feeders, and yes, she carried an actual ruler in her purse to measure lawn height. Vivian called it premium community management. I called it monetized harassment, finding ways to shake down homeowners under the guise of protecting property values. Trouble arrived one Tuesday morning in March. I was sipping coffee when the growl of heavy machinery shattered the quiet. Out my window, a paving crew was rolling hot asphalt across my gravel road. The air reeked of tar and diesel. When I confronted the foreman, he showed me a work order signed by Vivian, Community Access Improvement Project, Willowbrook Grand Entrance. My fence was torn up and tossed aside. My survey markers were destroyed. At the junction with a subdivision road, they'd even built decorative stone pillars topped with brass plaques. Willowbrook Commons Grand Entrance, EST 2023. They weren't just paving a road, they were paving over my rights. I stormed to the HOA office in the strip mall, still trailing gravel dust. Vivian was perched behind her desk, a wall of awards at her back, smiling like a cat that had swallowed the canary. Her perfume hung heavy in the air. "We're bringing your rustic access up to community standards," she told me, drawing out the word rustic as if it were a disease. She pointed to a blown-up plot map with my road highlighted in yellow and labeled Future Community Thoroughfare. Her evidence. A supposed verbal agreement from George Blackwood, the rancher who sold me the land, dead and long past defending himself. The next day, I received a certified HOA letter, $3,200 assessment, $85 monthly maintenance fees, and a 30-day deadline to install landscaping in compliance with community standards. Non-payment meant liens and lawsuits. Elena was livid. I could hear her slamming cabinets from across the house. Sophia's friends immediately began treating the fresh asphalt like a public parking lot and skateboard park, grinding wheels outside our bedroom window at 7 a.m. But Vivian didn't know the one thing that mattered most. George Blackwood had buried deed language so ironclad it would make her lawyers choke. Within a week, she planted her so-called victory stone markers with gleaming brass plaques at the subdivision entrance where my private property began. To her, it was the Willowbrook Commons Grand Entrance, established 2023. To me, it was the opening shot of a war she couldn't win. The nerve was unbelievable. Vivian hadn't just paved my road, she'd stamped it with her brand, claiming it as community property. But she wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Next came the security charade. A rent-a-cop in a golf cart, patrolling my driveway like it was Fort Knox. Tuesday morning, I'm heading out for supplies when he weighs me down at the end of my own property. Clipboard in hand, voice rehearsed. Sir, I'll need to see some ID and verify your authorization to use this community access road. The metallic taste of rage hit my tongue. I kept my voice even. That's my house right there. This is my property. He just shrugged. Ma'am says all vehicles need verification. Community safety protocols. Getting carted to drive home. The absurdity nearly made me laugh, but I knew this tactic. In construction, I'd seen developers pull the same stunt, create a fake reality, back it with security, and bully the owner into surrender. That's not safety. That's extortion. Vivian just called it enhancement. The next morning, I filed a complaint with county planning. Here's the thing most people don't know. In development, everything needs permits. Sidewalks, drainage, signage, you name it. Vivian had none. County records confirmed 0 approvals. Within 48 hours, bright orange stop work notices were stapled to her fancy stone pillars. Watching them flap in the Texas wind felt like Christmas morning. Her retaliation came fast. Emergency HOA board meeting Friday night. I wasn't invited, of course, but Marcus Webb, my neighbor, retired Marine, and master of accidental eavesdropping during dog walks, caught the highlights. According to Marcus, Vivian ranted for an hour about how I was blocking progress and sabotaging property values. The board, lapdogs all, voted unanimously to fine me $500 a day for failing to maintain a common area. My private road. The gall was almost impressive. Monday, a certified letter declared me persona non grata in my own neighborhood. Even the postal clerk looked embarrassed handing it over. Then Vivian cranked up the psychological warfare. She launched what she called a community awareness campaign. Translation: turn my neighbors into unpaid propagandists. Her message: Garrett Rockwell's gravel road is a menace to school buses, and his refusal to comply will tank your home value. Elena came back from grocery shopping shaken, still smelling of lavender shampoo, but damp with stress sweat. 3 neighbors had cornered her with warnings about my legal troubles. They made it sound like you're some kind of criminal, she whispered, hands trembling as she unpacked bags. Janet Morrison even asked if we needed to sell. Vivian played politics. I played long game. I called my old business partner, Dustin Chavez, now a traffic engineer, and ordered a professional GPS land survey. Cost me $3,200. The exact sum Vivian had billed me for destroying my property. Poetic symmetry. Then I called Rex Donovan, retired sheriff's deputy turned PI, with a gift for finding records people wanted buried. In 3 days, he struck gold. Vivian had been buying up land through shell companies for 18 months. Parcel by parcel, she was boxing me in. I knew the strategy, assemblage. Developers stitched together small lots into one big, profitable block. But the final holdout? That's where the pressure gets brutal. I was the keystone. Her legal argument leaned on prescriptive easement, the idea that long-term community use creates rights. Problem for her. She'd need to prove 10 years of continuous access. Impossible. I'd gated the road every winter since 2019. George Blackwood had done the same since 1987. We had receipts, gates, plowing, signage. Her claims were paper-thin. But she wasn't backing off. Friday, a cease and desist from Peton and Associates, the very firm that had handled the sale of my business. They knew I had money, which made their move gutsy, accusing me of destroying community property by placing survey stakes and threatening a $50,000 lawsuit. The irony dripped. Sue me for marking my own land while defending someone who literally bulldozed it. Elena found me in the garage that weekend, surrounded by maps and files. You look like a general planning a campaign, she teased. Funny you should say that, I replied, sliding George Blackwood's deed restrictions across the workbench. Because that's exactly what this is. Vivian escalated again. This time, surveillance disguised as neighborliness. She organized beautification walks. Groups of 8 to 10 HOA loyalists strolled past our house like reconnaissance teams. Phones out, snapping photos, whispering, pointing at our landscaping. The shutters clicked where birdsong used to be. Sophia pulled her curtains closed. Feels like living in a fishbowl, she muttered. She wasn't wrong. By afternoon, Facebook was full of passive-aggressive posts. Photos of our house with captions like, "Interesting landscaping choices," and "Wonder if this meets fire codes." Comment threads turned into digital witch hunts, neighbors dissecting our mailbox color, Elena's garden gnomes, even our shutters. Then came the bureaucratic knife twist. The county planning office suddenly had no record of my survey. The new clerk, who just happened to share Vivian's last name, told me I'd need to reapply. Fee $2,800. Timeline 6 to 8 months. In the meantime, my road access would be questionable. This wasn't paperwork. This was extortion with a letterhead. Meanwhile, Rex kept digging. What he found froze me. 6 LLCs all tied to Vivian, who bought properties surrounding mine. From above, the pattern was obvious. She controlled 3 sides of my land. Her game wasn't road access, it was empire building. My 3 acres were the missing puzzle piece in a multi-million-dollar development. And when pressure failed, sabotage followed. Thursday morning, our St. Augustine grass lay yellow and dead. Elena's roses shriveled in the Texas sun. The irrigation line had been cut clean, right where it crossed under Vivian's shiny new asphalt. Surgical work. Before I could call a plumber, my phone rang. "Mr. Rockwell," Vivian purred. "I understand you're planning to destroy community infrastructure. That will require board approval and a $5,000 damage deposit." She sabotaged my property, then tried to extort me for repairing it. Mug me, then sell me a bandage. That same week, Peton and Associates escalated, filing for an injunction to force removal of my survey stakes and no trespassing signs. The strategy was textbook. Bury me in lawsuits while continuing the very violations they were suing me over. But the cracks in her control were showing. Not everyone was sipping her Kool-Aid. Marcus Webb offered to install security cameras. Dr. Patricia Hernandez shared her own horror stories. Vivian had made my troubles look tame. Janet Kowalski, a teacher with Pentagon-level organization skills, revealed that Vivian had tried to buy her corner lot for half its value. When Janet refused, her trash, mysteriously, stopped being collected. It wasn't just me. Vivian was waging a campaign against anyone who wouldn't sell. Then the tax bomb hit. My property was reassessed thanks to the so-called road improvements. Annual bill jumped from $4,200 to $7,800. And to even appeal, I had to pay the full amount up front. Another pressure valve turned. That evening, Elena and I sat on the porch, watching sunset through a haze of dust and exhaust. Teenagers grinding skateboards where peace used to live. "She's getting desperate," Elena observed, watching yet another gaggle of HOA loyalists snap photos of our house. "Good," I replied, texting Rex for an update. Desperate people make stupid mistakes. This reads like the climax of a legal thriller novel. It's sharp, tense, and layered with intrigue. You've built up the harassment campaign, exposed the financial corruption, and shifted the tone from defense to counterattack in a way that feels cinematic. Here's what stands out and what could be sharpened further. Strengths. Escalation. The progression from petty harassment to federal-level crimes is smooth and believable. Each new discovery feels like pulling back another layer of corruption. Tone. The mix of wry humor, building a shrine to that cantankerous old cowboy, with cold legal detail, makes the narrator both relatable and formidable. Momentum. The narrative doesn't stall. Every paragraph either raises the stakes or arms the narrator with more leverage. Opportunities for tightening. Break up the monologue pacing. This chunk is heavy on exposition. Inserting more scenes, snippets of dialogue, physical setting details, moments of reaction from Elena or Marcus would let the reader feel the tension rather than just hear about it. Sharpen character contrasts. Vivian is vivid as a schemer, but we mostly see her indirectly through evidence and reports. Dropping in 1 or 2 direct encounters during this escalation could make her menace more immediate. Organize the discoveries. Right now, Rex's courthouse find, the financial collapse, the political corruption, and the insurance fraud all hit in sequence, which is powerful but dense. Consider a structured reveal, maybe grouped into property law, financial, and criminal buckets, so the reader tracks the mounting case clearly. The war room scene is fantastic. It could breathe more. Instead of summarizing each ally's contribution in one sentence, you could give each a small moment of action or banter that shows how this group is gelling into a team. That way, the allies assembling beats harder. Final hook. You end with Jake Morrison being introduced. This feels like a cliffhanger, so you might want to hint at why Jake is important. Even a one-line teaser, Jake didn't just collect debts, he collected secrets, would make the reader hungry for the next beat. Jake knew the HOA game better than anyone. He'd spent years running towing contracts for them and had files on every player in the business. When I laid out my situation, his weathered face cracked into a grin sharp enough to spook a rattlesnake. "That woman still owes me 12 grand for unpaid tows," Jake said, thumbing through a stack of invoices like a magician revealing a loaded deck. "Been chasing it for 8 months. You know what that means?" I did. Mechanics liens outrank most debts and can force asset sales to satisfy contractors. His outstanding bills weren't just paperwork. They were a legal tripwire that threatened to collapse Vivian's entire financial scaffolding. From there, our network expanded like a web spawn overnight. 5 neighbors volunteered as spotters. One tracked HOA meetings, another combed permit filings, a third kept tabs on construction sites, and the rest monitored social media. Marcus wired everything through encrypted comms fit for a military op. Dr. Hernandez recruited allies on the City Planning Commission and the school board, folks who'd grown tired of Vivian's bullying. A wetlands specialist confirmed EPA violations that carried federal teeth. And Sarah Sawyer, a local reporter with a track record of cracking real estate corruption, pitched a story. HOA president builds secret empire on harassment and fraud. She promised to hold the article until we triggered the legal filings. Dr. Hernandez even built a psychological profile. Vivian's behavior checked every box of narcissistic rage. The prognosis was ugly. If humiliated, she'd likely escalate to property damage or even physical confrontation. "We need to be ready for her to lose control completely," he warned during our last planning session. Catherine's legal trap was as precise as it was ruthless. We filed paperwork without serving the HOA, creating the illusion I was retreating. The goal was to bait Vivian into doubling down, committing crimes we could capture before springing the legal, media, and enforcement hammer all at once. That Thursday evening, standing in our war room surrounded by maps, files, and surveillance photos, I felt less like a homeowner and more like a general before battle. Elena squeezed my shoulder, grounding me. "Ready?" she asked. "More than ready," I told her. "It's time to end this." Vivian's response came quickly and theatrically. Around midnight the following Tuesday, I woke to the growl of trucks outside. Diesel fumes drifted through the vents as floodlights illuminated a crew laying speed bumps and residents-only signs. And there was Vivian, strutting around in a pink tracksuit, barking orders like a frazzled reality TV star, directing traffic at 2 a.m. Marcus's cameras captured it all. License plates, workers' faces, Vivian herself. The footage was damning and hilarious in equal measure. But her next move crossed into shocking. Thursday afternoon, Elena was loading groceries at school when Vivian slid up with a predator's smile. "Elena, honey," she purred. "I know this has been stressful. What if I offered you $25,000 cash, just for the inconvenience, if Garrett drops this lawsuit?" Elena, bless her, hit record on her phone. Vivian spilled everything, admitting the money came from the Community Improvement Fund, which Rex had already traced as embezzled dues. She was literally bribing us with stolen funds, confessing to a crime on camera. "Think about Sophia's college fund," Vivian pressed. "This mess could cost you everything." Elena didn't miss a beat. "The only thing costing us everything is dealing with criminals who think private property is their piggy bank." Meanwhile, Rex is digging into Commissioner Morse unearthed more rot. Permits were being rubber-stamped without site visits, signatures backdated through email. The Attorney General's office opened a formal probe. The harassment escalated to Cold War levels. Flyers smeared me as running an illegal business. Bogus fire marshal complaints. A call to CPS accusing us of unsafe living conditions. Sophia's college applications got mysteriously delayed. Through it all, my daughter held her grades and her head high, tougher than most adults I knew. Then came the property damage. Our mailbox smashed by 2 board members at 3 a.m., caught on camera. Grass poisoned with herbicides spelling out "move." Hoses slashed, flooding the basement. Orange paint splattered across the siding like a scarlet letter, marking us as the pariahs. That level of vandalism told me one thing. Vivian was running out of time. The community itself began fracturing. At an emergency HOA meeting, Dr. Hernandez demanded financial transparency. Marcus called out fake fines. Janet shredded the treasurer with questions about shell companies. Families started withdrawing from the HOA altogether. Online, the attacks got nastier. Fake accounts spreading lies, threats sent to Elena, bullying aimed at Sophia. But behind the chaos, law enforcement was waking up. Deputies documented the vandalism, linked perpetrators to known offenders, and increased patrols. By Saturday, Elena's intuition rang true. Vivian was about to go big. She announced a Community Action Day, a wholesome-sounding cleanup project that was actually a planned demolition of my property lines, survey markers, and cameras. Morning came with a convoy of trucks. Neighbors in matching Willowbrook Pride shirts unloaded chainsaws, bolt cutters, and sledgehammers like a suburban militia. Vivian strutted from her BMW with clipboard in hand, rallying her troops like a general. "Morning, neighbors," she called with false cheer. "Ready to bring this corner of the community up to standards?" That's when I stepped out with my own camera, and Deputy Rodriguez at my side. A no-nonsense veteran, he'd been quietly documenting Vivian for weeks. "Folks need to step back from the property line," he announced. "This is private land. You're trespassing." Vivian's performance was pure theater, waving bolt cutters, screaming about tax-paying citizens. Her crowd shuffled uneasily as she ranted. And when she accused Rodriguez of being in my pocket, you could feel the air change. In Texas, questioning law enforcement's integrity isn't just stupid. It's suicidal. Vivian's breaking point came in broad daylight. She stormed onto my property, waving bolt cutters, shrieking, "This man is destroying our community. We have every right to protect our property values." She looked less like a leader and more like a deranged conductor directing chaos. Deputy Rodriguez had finally seen enough. The second she set foot past my property line with tools and threats, the cuffs came out. The sharp snap of metal closing around her wrists silenced the crowd. Two of her most loyal volunteers joined her in being cited for criminal trespass. Here's where her media strategy completely collapsed. Vivian had summoned a local news crew, expecting glowing coverage of concerned citizens fighting for their neighborhood. Instead, cameras rolled as she ranted incoherently about property rights while being handcuffed. Reporter Sarah Sawyer, who had been quietly piecing together the larger story, turned her lens toward environmental violations, fraud, and municipal corruption. Vivian's on-camera tirade included admissions about forcing homeowners into compliance and pressuring property sales, confessions federal prosecutors could only dream of. Her followers, caught on tape vandalizing private property and matching T-shirts with professional demolition tools, looked more like a parody than a grassroots movement. The footage went viral. Within hours, Vivian sat in county jail on a $50,000 bond she couldn't post because her accounts were frozen under fraud investigation. Her mugshot aired alongside Sarah Sawyer's expose, linking her HOA empire to systemic corruption. From there, her carefully crafted financial machine unraveled like dominoes. Banks froze shell company accounts. Families tied to her development partnerships received foreclosure notices. The HOA's insurer canceled coverage under the Criminal Activity Clause, leaving board members personally exposed to lawsuits. Then Janet unearthed the bombshell. Vivian had siphoned $127,000 from the HOA's Community Improvement Fund to pay off her crumbling real estate ventures. Her brother-in-law's accounting firm had signed off on bogus audits, burying the theft for years. The backlash was swift. 15 families demanded an emergency election. Dr. Hernandez became president by unanimous vote. Marcus and Janet assumed oversight of finances. Their first act: apologize to harassment victims and implement full transparency. Meanwhile, the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit took the handoff from the EPA. Grand jury subpoenas flew for HOA records, bank statements, and Vivian's communications with Commissioner Morse. That night, I stood in my backyard, finally quiet, filled with birdsong instead of construction noise. Elena slipped her hand into mine. Her ring caught the fading light. "It's really over, isn't it?" she whispered. Almost, I thought, glancing at Jake Morrison's tow trucks parked strategically at subdivision entrances. One more surprise remained for her loyalists. When sentencing day arrived, the federal courthouse in Dallas felt like a sporting arena. Over 200 people packed Judge Patricia Morrison's courtroom. Reporters buzzed. Cameras clicked. I sat front row with Elena and Sophia, surrounded by friends turned allies. Marcus wore his uniform, Dr. Hernandez clutched medical testimony, and Janet had organized a dozen families to deliver victim statements. The evidence was overwhelming. Over 3 days, prosecutors presented 847 exhibits, every photo, video, and document Rex and I had logged. Elena spoke first, her calm voice describing workplace intimidation and threats against our family. Hernandez testified about residents driven to medical treatment by stress. Marcus outlined how Vivian's tactics resembled psychological warfare, not neighborhood management. One by one, families told stories of extortion and harassment. When given her turn, Vivian's lawyer begged for leniency, but she couldn't resist hijacking the moment. She launched into a rambling speech about protecting property values that sounded more like a bad real estate seminar than a defense. Judge Morrison let her rant for 15 minutes before cutting her off. Watching her cling to slogans about community standards while staring down federal prison was surreal. The prosecution then delivered the hammer. Catherine Silverman's timeline of escalating crimes, security footage of vandalism and threats, bank records showing $340,000 stolen, and an environmental expert testifying about permanent damage to wetlands. Combined racketeering and environmental charges sealed her fate. Judge Morrison's ruling was thunderous. Vivian would forfeit all properties and assets gained through crime, homes, investments, cars, to compensate victims and fund restoration. Then came the sentence, 8 years in federal prison. The courtroom erupted in applause that shook the marble walls. Vivian went pale as deputies cuffed her. Commissioner Morse had already been sentenced to 5 years. Other officials were flipping fast. Sarah Sawyer's broadcast reached millions, framing the case as both an environmental and property rights landmark. Within weeks, federal court ordered $2.1 million in wetland restoration, turning my land into the northern boundary of a new wildlife corridor. Our case became precedent. Rockwell versus Willowbrook Commons HOA will be studied in law schools. The Texas legislature drafted the Property Owner Protection Act modeled on our fight. Civil suits brought me $480,000 in damages plus treble RICO penalties. The HOA's insurer covered environmental costs. Vivian left court still shouting that she protected property values, pointing at me like a child blaming someone else for stolen cookies. Outside, in the golden sun, Elena squeezed my hand. "Ready to go home?" she asked. "More than ready," I said. And we did, but not before giving back. We donated $200,000 to create the Willowbrook Veteran Scholarship, with Elena, Hernandez, and Marcus on the board. Watching the first recipient, the son of a veteran neighbor, accept his award in a room that smelled of Elena's cookies proved the fight had meaning. The restoration exceeded expectations. Within months, wildlife returned, including painted buntings unseen for decades. My gravel road was reborn as a nature trail, complete with signs paid for by Vivian's forfeited funds, irony at its sweetest. Sophia earned a scholarship to study environmental engineering. Elena became assistant superintendent. We finally took our postponed Alaska trip, standing in wilderness that mirrored our reclaimed peace. Property values surged. Community rebranded as Willowbrook Conservation Community. The reforms we sparked passed into law, mandating HOA liability insurance, creating a state property rights ombudsman, and criminalizing organized harassment campaigns. Jake's Towing Company boomed. Sarah Sawyer's documentary, Neighborhood Nightmare, reached 15 million viewers and won an Emmy. Hernandez now leads the HOA transparently. Marcus and Rex run a PI firm helping other victims, and Vivian's former mansion is a community center offering conflict resolution workshops. Our annual Freedom Road Festival draws hundreds, bounce houses and barbecue where once her guards bullied neighbors. Now Elena and I plan semi-retirement, maybe even consulting on HOA abuse cases. The laughter of children along our trail mingles with bird calls over the wetlands, proof that freedom, once fought for, echoes long after. So I'll end with this. Got your own HOA nightmare? Share it. Someone out there needs to know they're not alone. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well and keeping detailed records.